Well, let's switch gears a little bit. Now that we let David cool off a little bit from his Joe Biden stuff, I want to kind of bring him back to that mindset a little bit. So, at Draxstore on Twitter had a thread that pointed something out of Peter Singer's Marx, a very short introduction. You guys may have seen these very short introductions. It's a common series. Now, I just want to point out this piece here. And
you know who Peter Singer is?
Was he like the? Is he like? Did he write animal rights pieces and stuff like that? Okay,
so he wrote like To Be a Bat. Yeah.
So like, I will just say about that, as I haven't engaged a whole lot with it, but I am very glad that the left that exists now
It's a little different.
is a little different than the left that like I grew up like that was all like sort of siloed.
It's funny to have him be the one who you get to do the Marx book, right? Versus like, David Harvey or hell, even like a Slavoj Žižek to be like, all right, let's get the guys talking about like animal perspectives to talk about Marxism. Yeah, it shows sort of where it was at that period of time.
Right. So I'm going to share this, David. This is the first time David's seen this, and it's going to really upset him, I think. Well, it's going to make him laugh, actually. This is from the conclusion. Many of Marx's other theories have been refuted by events. The theory that wages will always tend downwards to the subsistence level of the workers, the theory of the falling rate of profit, the theory that under capitalism, economic crises will become more and more severe, the theory that capitalism will force more and more people down into working class, and the theory that to force wages down, capitalism requires an, quote, industrial reserve army of paupers, people who are unemployed or irregularly employed or living near the subsistence level. Now, could you whiff? Like, that's like striking. That's like
a big one, man.
That's like getting like 5 strikes before you strike out. Like,
wait, so I'm sorry, I know you're pulling this from Twitter, but wait, this was 1993. When did this come out?
This is the 90s, I think. Peter, let me look it up for you.
Yeah, just because it's fascinating to read now and be like, well, this is 100% wrong, especially having lived through 2 major like world historical economic crises and like being on the other side of one right or still in it right now. I think, when you start to see a shift.
Oh, 1980. Okay.
Oh, so even, yeah. Well, honestly though, but this is where you see a big shift. In like, so like you have all this like fear and then this like, chest beating that happens after the Soviet Union falls. And you have all these left-wing philosophers trying to find some way to justify the years and years and years that they, read Marx, because it felt like neoliberal capitalism was just dominant and was the only game in town. But you also had a lot more security and opportunity in academia itself. You could not get somebody to be able to write something like that today who considered themselves to be a leftist, just because even like the universities have become proletarianized in the sense that like the vast majority of professors now, they're not tenured professors, right? They're adjunct professors who make $1,500 a class a semester, right? So like just in your like actual life, like you've seen conditions get worse. I mean, that's incredible.
I mean, I don't know, like the reserve, the pauper army, I don't think that could be demonstrated any clearer with the anxiety we have about unemployment insurance in this country, right? Like this, and the freak out we're having, like people think it's fucking great content to take a picture of some business owner saying, please be nice to the workers that are here because, we won't pay enough to like get more workers around here. Like, I don't know. It's an amazing, like none of those are correct. Not a single one of those things that he thought was refuted by events turned out to be reality.
I think it's like an awesome mistake in a way, because it's like the upside down world, but he was spot on, but just upside down. I think was actually correct. Like you could have predicted all of this, but you were saying it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
crazy.
And look, I think that he shouldn't have been the one who was tasked to do this. Just say
somebody else has been subsequently.
From everything I know about him, and it's been a little while since I've been in like the philosophy world. He seems a very good person in general. So I don't want to like attack him too much. But my God, this is such a great example as to what leads. I mean, because this is 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens for the next few decades in left-wing politics, particularly in like the English-speaking world? just wilderness, head in the sand. They had no idea what to do.
Right.
The left becomes Bill Clinton for fuck's sake, after this, right? It's an incredible moment. And you see
I gotta say, I've read about communism. I read Peter Singer's A Very Short Introduction, and look, there's some things to take from it, but most of it's bullshit. So.
Yeah, I mean, and other than like Richard Wolff, or like God bless him for like sort of sticking it out in the library somewhere, when you basically be pushed out of like serious discourse. Thank God some people kept the flame alive during the dark days. But this is why I always tried to, like, not in being like a theory guy or anything like that, saying, oh, you spend all your time like reading radical theory, but like, look, they took this from us. Right, that even the people who were supposed to be like the tribunes or the people fighting for these theories basically reject them. I mean, honestly, read that section right there and ask yourself if that person is a Marxist, right? Because those are like the core tenets of Marxism, right? So there's this serious break in the history of philosophy and like left-wing thought that like we're now reclaiming. And I think it is really important for us to reclaim. And I'm going to tell you where it's not going to come from is Harvard or Yale. Like, it's not going to come from universities with grants and big donors who are going to try to do the work to reclaim this stuff. Next week for patrons, we're going to be talking with Megan Day about this kind of radical college in Arkansas that was around in the 20s and 30s that really found that it's like, it is our duty to like uphold these traditions for working people, for them to use them to better their lives. And understand that anyways, like, it was a very much a victory of the right wing to basically be able to smash Marxism, that even the so-called left at this time was just basically saying, yeah, all these things that are critical to our philosophy, I don't think we believe them anymore.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is that I don't have any background around the guy and what was going on at that time with in the left movement, but it's almost like he didn't believe in his own tenets. It's like that's the vibe I get out of it. You know what I mean? Or he didn't fully buy into it for some reason.
The arm's length.
And next month we're going to be doing a conversation on a book that's really important. I disagree with it. It's a bad book, but it's a book called Hegemony and Socialist Strategy, and it's like this genuine attempt from like that kind of worldview to like reclaim something from Marxism, but basically they erase everything that makes Marxism like a worthwhile theory in the first place, right? And it just becomes like, I mean, I don't want to bore everybody with it now because it's, there's a lot going on with it, but essentially they make this argument like we're going to get rid of class and we're just going to have like floating signifiers in politics, and then we'll construct a big group of people to win elections, right? Well, that just sounds like basic Democratic Party or any political party theory, right? It's like, oh, we'll get, this group of people to vote for us and this group of people to vote for us. And if we get enough of them, then we win, right? It's like, okay, well, what the hell? Why are we even dealing with Marxism at this point? You're just like anybody else trying to engage in politics. So a super dark time, man. And I'll just close by saying, whenever people like get really down at the state of the left today, remember, it's a lot better than it was in the 1980s, man.
Honestly, even in 2007, my first major exposure to Marx, like where I was assigned him, frankly, was in a 19th century philosophy class in college. And I remember reading like German ideology and thinking like, this shit's fucking dope. But it was also being presented as if it was like dead, like it was Latin or something, like, right? Like, and I remember like that, and I don't really remember like being in class at Minnesota State University Moorhead very often, but that I remember just like feeling like, could this, because like there's certain times in Marx where it's like, oh yeah, that it's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
Like that sort of feeling, and that tension between him saying it's gonna happen and you kind of buy in the logic, and it being presented to you as this inert sort of like museum exhibit that I found fascinating. And I think I appreciate that I saw it being presented like that, because I don't think that's probably how Marx comes up these days in colleges. I'd be curious how he's couched by philosophy professors like that.
It's interesting too, because it makes me think that, when the mainstream culture, the mainstream accepted thought, or, with the economic system, with everything else, when you think outside of it, but you live in this place where everybody kind of like everybody is generally accepted, it's kind of weird what it does. You know what I mean? Even though something can make sense or something could be proven, like it's whatever he said wasn't going to happen is proven today. Like we see it and over again. It's like, it's hard when you're swimming in that pool to like, you know, to really articulate it or to really believe that it's possible. And I think a lot of people have trouble with that because a lot of people don't have enough imagination to think outside of whatever is the mainstream thought is. And I think it's a problem because I see it in a lot of different spaces, not just you know, economics and stuff like that.
No, and in fairness to folks in the 80s who like started to have questions, it's like, you know, the end of the Communist Manifesto is poetry, right? Like Marx is like, you know, workers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains, right? That's a claim that feels like it's just, you know, thundering like through history. And then you're sitting here in, you know, 1980 and you might wonder, it's like, well, you know, where are they? Like, you see why this happened, but one of the bigger problems was you had the left completely decouple itself from the class, right? Like you had the left pretty much, the left in the sense of like, you know, Marxists or people were thinking in this way, you know, they're existing in universities for the most part, and then a few people who very bravely fought the fight and kept the torch alive and were part of important organizations. And I don't ever want to minimize people who were struggling in that period of time, but you know, these weren't popular movements, right? So when you have the people who are sort of writing the history and the theory, and they're just people hanging out, talking to other people who reading guys like Shakespeare or stuff like that, you know, ideas that might seem dead too, right? You know, you could see how you could become disillusioned. But yeah, I mean, I think history has very much shown the opposite has been true, that these ideas are very much alive.